Yeah,
time?
well, when I worked on the chat room, which I mentioned earlier, which was Talk TV was a new specialty channel that soon uh, we needed a lot of Canadian content. We needed to do it cheaply. So the idea was to do a 5-hour daily live talk show. If you can believe it, 5 hours a day. Think of and it was all guests. It was all people we brought in and interviews
Your
and stuff.
hosts must have been exhausted.
We had 5, they were exhausted. There were 5 hosts, including Seamus O'Regan, who just finished being on Canada AM as well, but that was the job he had before that. And we had this cub reporter, this young guy who'd never done it before, named Ben Mulrooney. So he was another reporter we had on the show. So that was really fun because they were new, fresh faces, and the show was a real risk, and being live was a real risk. To have people who weren't really professional, they didn't have a ton of experience behind them, so it was kind of seat of your pants television, which was really exciting. And I think it probably produced some of the best TV and some of the worst TV I've ever created. There was, an example of, I don't know if you call this good or bad, but we were doing it at the temple, the Masonic temple, and the Prime Minister at the time was Jean Chrétien. He was downstairs doing another interview with our news department, and we had street reporters as well who were just gathering stuff on the street. And one of the ideas for a whole segment was to get Jean Chrétien on the show, like to get our street reporter, just grab him and pull him into the studio and try to get him to do. So we put this time aside in our lineup for him when we timed it when he was supposed to be finished his interview. So I put maybe 45 minutes, which is a ridiculously long amount of time of TV to devote, but that was kind of what the show was. It was very loose. So we were waiting for him and he kept getting delayed, and so our hosts were, what do we do? And and they were trying to come up with conversation, and we've got a live audience watching us while we're waiting for the Prime Minister, because I wanted to get him live. That was the fun of it, right? But you always know that something can happen. So 10 minutes, 15 minutes passed, and we're on live TV, and they're telling stories about their pets, and they're playing music, and they're just like whatever they can, and they were very entertaining, which was a good thing, but still. So then I just told them, I just gave them a deck of cards, and they played cards on TV, and the cameras were kind of being the different players in the card game. So it was awful, but it was also really funny. And our audience, some of our audience was just, I can't believe you guys are doing this. This is horrible. But other people were just howling. They thought it was hilarious, and we finally got them, but it was a really long time later. So I knew I was taking a risk, but that's kind of what that particular show wasn't. The Journal, and it wasn't Canada AM. Like it was a more experimental kind of TV anyway. But we had a big reach in terms of audience, so there were a lot of people watching, and it was kind of crazy. So it was kind of a good thing and a bad thing. It was a disaster, but it was also it tested all of our ability to just kind of go with it.
Yeah.
It's
good.
Oh, I've got a really funny one too.
Okay.
That involves my daughter Jane.
Yeah.
And we were doing this whole segment on the chat room on broken bones and on casts and stuff. We had these doctors on talking about how a bone heals and what how you set on, like it was just life stuff that we had experts coming on talking about it. And I often had my kids on set because it was a show that went into the evening, so I brought them on set quite a bit. And Jane, at that time, I can't remember how, she would have been maybe 7 or 8 years old, and she had a cast on her arm because she'd broken her arm. And so she was on the panel, and the host, there were doctors and other adults, but she was just one kid there, and the host was asking her, what does it feel like, and is it itchy and stuff, and she said, yeah, it's getting loose, because as your arm heals, the swelling goes down and your cast gets loose. And so Jane's like, yeah, I can wiggle. He said, can you wiggle your arm? She said, yeah, I can wiggle it. And all of a sudden her cast popped off on live TV, and she just turned so red. And we were all laughing so hard. And my biggest worry as a producer was they're going to think that it was a fake cast, but it wasn't. And the doctor actually said, no, that can actually happen if your arm, because she was about to get it taken off, so her arm was almost healed. But it was so funny, and happened on live TV. So that was a good moment.
That's crazy.